Dear Sergei Viktorovich, esteemed employees of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Your Excellency, ambassadors, most reverend archpastors, dear brothers and sisters, Christ is risen. The tradition of gathering during the Easter days within the walls of the reception house of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia is an opportunity for live communication between representatives of the Russian Orthodox Church, other Christian communities of the country, and representatives of other religions traditional in our country, and provides an opportunity for us, religious people, to have communion with representatives of the diplomatic service and the diplomatic corps accredited in Russia. The resurrection of Christ grants us the strength to build life in accordance with God's design, with God's law, embedded in the moral nature of man. It is difficult to say whether our world would have become better and safer over the past 2,000 years. One thing is clear. Thanks to the feat accomplished by the Lord Jesus Christ, who redeemed the human race from sin, powerful forces of good have appeared and are at work in our world, capable of transforming the inner world of each individual person, regardless of their national or civic affiliation, language, and culture. This is the light of victory over death. This is the light of victory in general over what we call sin. But everyone, I think, understands that what is called sin in the religious sense is that which does not correspond to God's law of life, to God's commandments. Well, for non-believing people, one can say the following. Everyone begins to understand what sin is from their own life experience. I have never seen a single sinner, a true sinner, who was a happy person. But that never happens because one must pay for everything. Sin is the infliction of harm on another and on oneself, of course. And actions of this kind, even thoughts of this kind, do not pass without consequence. And a person receives, not only, as our Christian faith teaches, in the afterlife the corresponding punishment or approval, but already in this simple earthly life. This is the most powerful proof that there is a force from above. Already here, in this life, one receives punishment for sins. Well, therefore, of course, I want to once again say, returning to our main topic, that the development of interreligious, inter-Christian relations in modern Russia is an important factor of influence on our people in general, where people, being citizens of Russia, belong to different religions and confessions. This interaction of ours, apart from what I think is a purely spiritual influence on people, also has, in a good sense, political significance, because it promotes the strengthening of civic responsibility and solidarity of our people. In other words, these interreligious ties are not only matters concerning purely internal religious life, they are also those topics which, without doubt, and whose questions and solutions exert influence on the life of our society and our state. Speaking of our pressing matters, I would first like, of course, to dwell on external relations. And first of all, as an Orthodox Patriarch, I would like to say a few words about inter-Orthodox relations. We attach great importance to the development of brotherly relations with the local Orthodox churches. The majority of churches remain disposed toward maintaining good relations with the Moscow Patriarchate, and evidence of this are the visits to Moscow that took place in the past year by delegations of the Antiochian, Jerusalem, Georgian, Serbian Patriarchates, as well as the Greek Orthodox Church, the Orthodox Church in America, and the Macedonian Orthodox Church. However, today inter-Orthodox relations are experiencing a certain test of fidelity to the canonical order. unfortunately, a doctrine alien to orthodoxy regarding the special authoritative powers of my brother, the Patriarch of Constantinople, continues to be imposed from outside. It is entirely clear that ecclesiology, that is, the ecclesiastical teaching of the Eastern Christian churches, i.e., Orthodoxy, differs from the Catholic Church. There is one head with special powers, authoritative powers, with a special kind of spiritual authority. This refers to the Pope of Rome. Nothing of the sort has ever existed in the East, does not exist, and must not exist. Therefore, all attempts to present one of our brothers as possessing special authoritative powers over the entire Orthodox oecumene are both violations of church law and dangerous from the point of view of political influence on local Orthodox churches through a single center which may, I am not saying it has now fallen under such influence, although some say it has, but which may fall under the political influence of powerful forces. Why hide it? The Pope of Rome, who has sovereignty, who has his own sovereign territory, and even he is not free from influence, although to the maximum extent possible, he still possesses a certain autonomy. But when one of the patriarchs is situated on the territory of a country where Christianity is in an absolute minority, which possesses no levers of political influence over the situation, well, of course, he finds himself in a vulnerable position. And to grant one of the patriarchs, especially one in such a difficult position, special privileges and special powers to govern the entire universal orthodoxy, all Orthodox churches. This, first of all, goes against our tradition, against our faith, in which we differ from the Rome of the Catholics, and moreover, it can carry with it political consequences unacceptable for a whole number of churches. I would like to say once more that already now we are faced with such a difficult topic. This is the incursion. Well, I'll say it, of the Fanar, which is a district of Istanbul, where the center of the Constantinople Patriarchate is located. The incursion of the Fanar into the church life of Ukraine. All of this has led to a protracted crisis in inter-Orthodox relations. Three primates who supported the actions of Constantinople on Ukrainian soil have, unfortunately, as they say, further aggravated the situation in universal orthodoxy. At the same time, the majority of the heads and hierarchs of the Orthodox world are either speaking out against the uncanonical interference of Constantinople or are refraining from public statements on this matter. Among the churches that do not support the incursion of the Fanar into Ukraine, a special place is held by the Antiochian and Jerusalem Patriarchates, whose positions carry very great weight in Orthodoxy. The Bulgarian and Albanian churches, which recently elected new primates, are not changing their views on the Ukrainian question. We hope it will be the same in the Georgian Orthodox Church, which will soon have to elect its new head following the passing of His Holiness and Beatitude Patriarch Catholicos Ilya II in March of this year. What has been said about the complexities in the relations between Orthodox churches on the Ukrainian issue would have remained a purely internal church matter if it did not concern the rights of millions of Orthodox believers in Ukraine. Taking the opportunity to speak in the presence of domestic and foreign diplomats, representatives of Christian communities, non-Orthodox brothers here who nevertheless hold significant influence in their own religious communities, I would like once again to draw special attention to the facts of discrimination against the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. The state pressure of the Ukrainian authorities on the churches has taken on the character of open religious persecution. Where are the outraged voices about the violation of rights and freedoms? They are not heard. This once again proves that behind all of this are not only some religious and canonical topics, but also political factors. Unfortunately, in the Baltic states and Moldova, state pressure on the structures of our church is also intensifying, including through the adoption of discriminatory legislative acts. For example, the threat of the liquidation of the presence of the Russian Orthodox Church in Estonia remains relevant at present. Remarkably, Orthodoxy entered the life of the Estonian people centuries ago. There is an Estonian church headed by a person of Estonian nationality. Even in Soviet times, the position of this church was more privileged than the position of the Russian Orthodox Church on the territory of the Russian Federation. Nevertheless, despite unprecedented pressure, the Estonian Orthodox Church, just like the Orthodox Church in Moldova, together with its flock, maintains fidelity to the canonical order. But this is difficult work. And of course the question arises, why in Europe, where human rights and religious freedom are proclaimed, where the significant influence of liberal philosophy is present in general, why in Europe does there suddenly arise such obvious injustice, such obvious violation of rights and freedoms? Why then do law enforcement organizations not rise up? Why is all of this somehow somewhere on the margins of general concern, not at the center? Of course, this cannot but trouble me, first and foremost as Patriarch of all Rus, because the Orthodox Church of Estonia falls under the jurisdiction of the Patriarch, although it possesses the rights of autonomy. I would like to say once more, returning now to more positive topics, that we continue our dialogue with the Vatican on the themes of protecting traditional values. We do not avoid the problem of human rights and religious freedom in Ukraine either. The dialogue is substantive, not merely a matter of protocol. We value this opportunity to maintain such contacts with the newly elected Pope, who is American by nationality, but, as I was told, upon becoming Pope, he first declared, "I am not an American, but a Pope of Rome, first and foremost." And that is the correct position, because if you aspire to lead such a vast multinational community, you must, as they say, restrain your own particular national and all the more so national political interests. In our view, that is what is happening now. At any rate, positive relations have been established with the elected Pope, and we hope this will continue to develop. Such is the style of our relations. If speaking of relations with other churches, I would of course like to especially emphasize the good relations with the heads and high representatives of the Coptic Armenian Apostolic Church, the Malankara Indian Church, the Ethiopian Eritrean Church, and the Assyrian Church of the East, both at the bilateral level and on international platforms. Our Russian Church continues to develop dialogue with the leaders of non-Christian religions and interreligious international organizations. The leadership and representatives of the Moscow Patriarchate continue to participate regularly in interreligious events in the countries of the post-Soviet space, as well as in more distant foreign countries. It should be noted that such major organizations as the UN Alliance of Civilizations and the World Conference of Religions for Peace show interest in developing contacts with the Russian Orthodox Church, and the dialogue of traditional religions with international structures, in my view, is at a sufficiently high level overall. This direction does not lose its relevance, but on the contrary becomes ever more significant in light of the newly intensified conflicts in the Middle East. The situation in Syria causes particular concern, where Orthodox believers are subjected to violence and pressure from radical elements. Savage attacks continue. I use this word deliberately. Savage, like beasts, without any sense of conscience, without any regard for any kind of ethics, like a feral pack. Attacks on Christian churches in Nigeria, where quite recently believers of the African Exarchate of the Russian Orthodox Church became victims of such terror. I would like to note the good cooperation of the Church with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, which provides support in resolving the problematic issues I have listed and is open to the realization of joint initiatives. Together, we strive to respond to modern, as they now say, challenges, including those concerning traditional morality, to raise our voice in defense of the family, of marriage as the union of a man and a woman, as well as the value of human life from the very moment of its inception. A visible manifestation of our fruitful cooperation is the care for our compatriots abroad. Their spiritual nourishment is carried out by the numerous foreign establishments of the Moscow Patriarchate, located in 105 countries of the world, in which 502 parishes operate and 2,039 sacred clergy serve. In many countries, the Embassy of Russia provides its premises for the holding of religious services and assists in the organization of services in other locations on the territory of a given country. The assistance of the diplomatic representatives of Russia in this important matter is invaluable. Due to the intensifying anti-Russian sentiment, our foreign parishes are most often subjected to unlawful pressure. I will once again underscore the role and significance of the Department for External Church Relations, because it is precisely this institution that bears responsibility for organizing our church life in more distant foreign countries. Today, due to the not entirely favorable political context, the burden and responsibility of the Department for External Church Relations has increased, and it is coping with these circumstances successfully. And God grant that our external church activity continues as successfully in the future. In concluding my greeting, I would like to note that whatever historical epochs the Church may experience, whatever trials it may pass through, it remains faithful to its calling, to affirm in people's souls faith in God, to kindle good hope and active love. And we call this the path to the salvation of the soul, which is illumined by the light of Christ's resurrection, and therefore is for us the only vector of development of our spiritual life, and no other vector exists. I wish all of us Easter joy, well-being, and success in the service of each person in their own place. And once again, I thank, in the person of yourselves, and in the person of all the leadership and employees of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for the remarkable interaction and cooperation.
Сотрудников Министерства иностранных дел за замечательное взаимодействие и сотрудничество.